Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Career Therapy Live. It is Thursday, September 17th, 8 a.m. Central Time, and we are back for another great conversation and to answer any and all of your career and job search questions. Today, we have a special guest, Chad Wilson, who is another coach here at Career Therapy. And so I want to bring him on, introduce him to everyone, and answer any job search questions that you might have towards the end of the conversation. So I'm going to pull him in right now. Chad, I hope you're ready.
Hello.
All right. Good morning. How's it going?
Good morning. Good. I got my cup of, what do you call it? Brown liquid
drugs. I love the Chance mug. Yeah. I wish I had mine. It's in the washing or dishwasher. I almost said washer. But excited to have you on this morning and excited to chat. For anyone who is watching, give us a shout in the comments. Let us know that you're here. And if you have any questions, any job search questions that you would like some new perspectives on, please put them in. I'd love to get Chad's perspectives on things. Let's just start by the way of, giving us a little bit of your background with that infamous question from every interview, and tell us about
yourself. I have had, quite an interesting sort of journey over the past couple years. I was working in higher education, leading teams for academic support for college students, helping college students overcome academic barriers and graduate on time. And I knew that there were strengths that I had that weren't being utilized in my role. But I wasn't happy, and I was complaining about my job. And it was around December of 2018 that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna stop complaining. Like, that's gonna be my New Year's resolution as we get into 2019, is I'm gonna stop complaining and I'm gonna actually do something. And so that one decision led me down a path of multiple other decisions in sort of starting to act towards a career change. But I was a little bit stuck, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I knew I had some skills and I knew I had some interests. So I started asking my friends who were in different fields, I think I might be interested in this, and you do that. So tell me about what that's like. So I asked a friend who's a project manager, and I asked a friend who's a business analyst, and I asked a friend who was a user experience designer. And I started just interviewing people about what they did and trying to figure out how my skills might fit into a role like theirs. And I landed on user experience design. I took a one-day course to validate the fact that I was interested in this as a potential investment. And then I enrolled in a boot camp after affirming that was the best, the best sort of route for me.
What was it about UX that stood out to
you? At the time, user experience design spoke to a desire for problem solving. I found myself drawn to the focus on, or the balance between research in user experience design and being able to move into kind of a tech field. Because being in higher education after 14 years, I could sort of see higher education, the landscape changing. And we had just implemented some new software in my department, and I saw usability issues and how that impacted the adoption of the tool that we were using. And I knew that if I could get into the tech world, even if it was just in sort of educational tech, that would be where the future would be. And so I knew I wanted to be in that space somehow. I actually went into my user experience design bootcamp with an eye for eventually moving into product management. I knew that product management was going to be a bigger leap. So UX was going to be a stepping stone to product management.
Yeah, those stepping stones are important.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
In my boot camp, though, I learned all kinds of other ways that I could utilize design thinking. And so product management kind of fell by the wayside in favor of service design and learning experience design and other ways that I could utilize that framework to help organizations and individuals achieve growth and change, adapt to change, that sort of thing.
That's really cool because you went to a boot camp to learn UX with a knowledge that you wanted to be in the ed tech field in some way, shape, or form, potentially. So it kind of served two purposes. It showed you, or it gave you the skills that you wanted to learn from the boot camp, but it also gave you exposure to the ed tech boot camp space. That's like,
exactly,
it's double value. It's such a great idea.
Exactly. It was sort of meta in that way too.
Yeah. And now that you have kept going down that path, where did that lead to next? What was your experience like going through and coming out of a boot camp?
I had always had really, I feel like my job searches in higher education, I always felt really confident in. I was able to communicate my strengths and the value that I would bring to an institution or an organization. And I think the structure was a little bit, there was a little bit more structure provided in a higher education search. In approaching my job search out of my boot camp for a user experience role, I felt prepared for it because we had, career coaching built into our program, and because of my previous experience, I felt prepared for the job search. But I think my expectations were a little. I expected to get a job within 2 to 3 weeks. I don't know why. Everybody had told me it would be 3 to 6 months, and I just said, I've got this. I'm gonna get a job within a month, making the salary that I want to make. And so when that inevitably didn't happen, I think I had to figure out some creative ways to approach the job search differently than I had in the past. I had never built a portfolio. And so continually updating and iterating on that portfolio and asking people, what is it speaking to? What skills am I not showing? What skills am I communicating? And trying to make sure that that portfolio communicated the skills that I wanted to sell to employers was really important for me. Because there's only so much that we did in the boot camp, right? Mm-hmm. And so portraying a boot camp project on a portfolio can sometimes be a double-edged sword because it is limited in its scope. And so being able to communicate the right things or choose, I had to really, really edit the text in my case study because nobody wants to read a huge case study. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what are the skills that I want this case study to speak to, and editing those case studies on my portfolio to speak directly to one or two skills that I wanted to highlight rather than trying to tell everything. The other thing that I did is I started, informational interviews for me were key. So I started going to a lot of meetups. This was,
pre-pandemic.
2019, where we could actually go and meet people in person. So, I was going to a lot of meetups, and I was following up with people that I met at those meetups, particularly the speakers on the panels, the people who were in jobs that I emulated, that I wanted to have. I would reach out to them and say, hey, you have a job that I think is really cool. I want to learn more about what you do. Because I was still learning. I was still sort of processing everything that I learned in my boot camp. And I didn't quite know where in the user experience world I fit yet. And so a lot of it was continuing to experiment like I had done before I left to go to the boot camp, asking a lot of questions about what those jobs actually look like, so that I could really communicate both my skills and then how I fit in whatever organization or company I was looking at.
That's awesome. And when you were in the boot camp and you had that idea of like, I'm going to get a job within 1 to 2 months, right? Where did that idea come from? I'm always curious when folks are thinking about the job search. We have these ideas, and then there's reality, and then there's the gap in between. And I'm kind of curious, like, even when I left my very first job like I had a job out of college and I quit that job, and I had read a blog somewhere that was like, expect 6 months, like be ready for 6 months. And that's what the idea that I had in my head. And then when 6 months started approaching, I started freaking out. But I'm kind of curious, like, what were the things that, sources of information that you were getting that led to that idea?
Yeah, I know exactly. It was my friend who was enrolled in the same boot camp as I was enrolled in, a cohort or two before me, got a job within a month. And so, I know sort of that I knew that was sort of an exceptional case, but we all want to believe that we were the exceptional case, right? So I think that was it. It was, oh, well, he did it, so obviously so can I.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So for anyone who's going through a boot camp, because we do have a lot of folks from boot camps watching, what's kind of your takeaway from that big experience? I know you had like a lot of learnings of how to approach networking and things like that, but is there like one thing that stands out that you'd really want to hammer home?
One of the things that I found really, really helpful is acknowledging that there are going to be periods in your job search. My job search took a really long time. I got some freelancing gigs, but ultimately I didn't find a full-time position for 11 months. And acknowledging that the job search is going to have periods of high activity and periods of low activity, and planning for those periods of low activity so that it was really easy for me to feel down and depressed and discouraged in those weeks where I didn't have any informational interviews set up and I didn't have any leads for jobs that I wanted to apply for, and I was waiting to hear back for those that I already did apply for, but I wasn't hearing back from anyone, and I didn't have any meetups to go to. Those were the weeks that I really struggled. And so I can't hammer home enough to plan for that and have a consistent routine where you have side projects that you're working on, or you have something that you can put energy towards that makes you feel like you're moving forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, we see motivation, the topic of motivation, come up all the time in like the applications that people submit for coaching. And yeah, I think planning is such a huge piece of keeping yourself motivated, but and then also not beating yourself up during the down periods, right? Like every single person who goes through the job search, unless like they have a family connection and get a job in a week, like every single person is going to be anxious at some point, depressed at some point, overwhelmed at some point, and having maybe even some fun at some point in the process. We do have a question here for you from Victoria. Victoria asks, how long was the UX Design Bootcamp, and how did you prepare for your informational meetings?
Yeah, great questions. So my bootcamp was 6 months, and that included 2 client-facing projects. So I was really fortunate. The program that I went into, I chose because of the client-facing work that I knew we would do. Being able to have that in my portfolio was, I think, really, really helpful. And then the other question was, how did I prepare for informational interviews? One of the things that I did is I made sure to learn as much as I could about the person that I was interviewing or meeting with, what their background was, where they came from. I gravitated toward people who I had things in common with. So people who came from a boot camp, or people who came from higher ed, or people who just came from generally a non-traditional background into tech. I wanted to make sure to ask specific questions about that experience and how they translated their previous experience to their current roles. So I wanted to reach out to those individuals. And so preparing questions about their background and their career journey was important. And then I made sure to also do research on their organization. Again, the people that I met with worked in organizations whose values aligned very closely with my own. I actually landed a freelance job with a digital solutions firm here in Chicago due to, I went to their meetup. The facilitator of that meetup was incredible. I saw her facilitate the workshop, and I was like, I want to do what she does, because the way that she carried herself and the way that she spoke and the way that she taught were all things I wanted to emulate and would love to sort of, have what she has, so to speak. And so I just reached out and I told her that. I was like, I love what you do. I love how you do it. I want to learn more. We went for coffee. She introduced me to her supervisor. I had lunch with her supervisor, and then I had a freelance gig. And both of the conversations with those people were about the organization's values, because they closely aligned with mine. Their personalities meshed with mine. And so you just know, during these interviews, when you get a burst of energy and you get really excited to talk to this person, it's a fit. And so I always tell people, follow that feeling. Follow that feeling of don't focus on the rejections. Don't focus on the people who aren't getting back to you. Focus on the people who match your energy. And those are going to be the places where opportunities arise.
That's awesome. Wait, yep, I'm still on. All right. I think there's a lot in what you're saying here that I think really, really stands out and is important for people to know. A few things that I want to call out. Going all the way back to the beginning of your story, you had a moment where you set an intention to stop complaining. And I've actually had that moment too, and I've told that on this live stream a dozen times, where a friend called me out and I was like, oh crap, no one wants to hang out with me, so I got to change something about myself. And that moment of stop complaining, and then also getting to that point where you're looking for full-time, but you're open to freelance, you're open to contracts, you're open to volunteering it, or at least reaching out to these organizations and the founders. And so I think that that's a really important thing to call out, both those pieces of how you changed your mindset of, I'm going to stop complaining and I'm going to be open to opportunities. And then the next thing you did there was you said, I'm going to not just go to the event, but meet the people that run the event. And this is something that I used to say all the time when I was working with marketers, is it's good to attend an event. It's better to help run the event.
Yeah.
And it's best to put on the event. And so that's sort of scale moving upward. And so I love that you kind of have been living that. And I would say probably your master skill, as far as I can tell, is that ability to show up to something and then connect with the person who ran it. That's how we met.
Yeah.
I think that's a superpower, but it's probably one that you had to develop over time. What was when was that moment where you started having that aha and going that next step versus just attending something maybe early in your career? Or have you always done it?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm thinking about it. And the immediate thought is I've always wanted to run everything. So
yeah, that's great.
So it's probably just baked into my personality that I'm always the one wanting to run the show, and so obviously I'm going to want to talk to the people who are running the show. But I think it is really important. Everybody that goes to a meetup is there to learn, and a lot of people are the other attendees that you can network with are all also searching for jobs usually, and so it doesn't serve. It serves me to be a support system for those other people and to network with those other people who are attending, for the purpose of creating a network, right? So everybody that's at that meetup or in the webinar or whatever, the conference, everybody can be part of your network, and you can mutually help one another by offering advice, offering support, sharing resources, and all of that is really valuable. But in a job search, the biggest thing that is going to help is getting in front of the decision makers. And so whether that's the person running the event or whether that's the person reviewing the resumes, right? Getting in front of the decision makers is what's going to make the difference. And so, I've like I said, always been the person who wants to be involved. In college, I was the person who ran the LGBT campus organization. In grad school, I was the person who was involved on the committee in the professional association. I've always been the person to just, when I go to something, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to be the person that says, here, let me set up the chairs for this meeting. Let me, that's just who I am. And it's something that I have learned just by doing that when you are able and willing and offer assistance or the ability to serve, people see that, people notice that. And so if you go to a meetup and it's a meetup that you really enjoy, offer to help run the next one. Offer to, hey, when is your next one? Can I come and can I do something? Can I help? Most meetups and webinars and conferences are run by volunteers. And so anytime that you can volunteer, I didn't get as involved in AIGA here in Chicago as I wanted to because other things took priority. But, you don't even have to be a member of the professional association AIGA to be on one of their committees. And so if you're looking for, something in design, figure out how you can get involved in that professional association as a volunteer. And then you're suddenly surrounded by people who are doing the jobs that you want to do. And it's another tool in your belt. So I don't know if that actually answered your question, but
I think it definitely does. And just for anyone who doesn't know, AIGA is American Institute of Graphic Arts. And I want to just pull up Juan is saying in the comments here, Chad, that can't be said better. Focus on the energy that matches with yours. This is very true with the art director who decided to hire me on the team with my current employer. I too experienced that spark and was excited to hear for a second round with the interview process with her. That is fantastic, Juan. Thanks for sharing.
And I want to add to that.
Yeah.
I was just speaking with somebody last week who said, oh yeah, I'm applying to all these jobs that I don't really, I feel kind of ho-hum about, right? He was applying to jobs, but he wasn't putting himself out there in terms of like networking. And so if you're not feeling excited about a job that you're applying for, you're not going to be excited to work there. Mm-hmm. So really, I think that's why it's so important to do the networking, is because you will find the excitement.
And there seems to be this general kind of hum in people's heads that there's no way work can be Interesting. Like, I have to work at a place that's boring because I need to pay rent. And I'm always so curious about that, because I'm like, I'm pushing people to find a focus and like at least have an opinion on where they'd like to. They're like, I'll work anywhere, anywhere in the world, any company, in any position. And I'm like, no, you wouldn't, because if I put you in a cigarette company in a marketing role and you're an accountant, you'd be pretty upset, or a non-smoking accountant, you'd be pretty upset. So like, it's so interesting how our fear of pigeonholing ourselves, or our fear of limiting our opportunities, let's say, actually limits our opportunities, because then we never go talk to anyone that we're actually interested in. And you have 5 really boring conversations, you're going to think marketing sucks, rather than having a dozen really good ones and realizing that it's pretty great. When it comes to what you're doing now, I want to shift to the present and the future. What are some of the things that you're really focused on, and the types of folks that you're trying to help?
Yes. So my day job is a learning experience designer. And so, one thing I do in my job is I help design curriculum. And so I'm doing some of that also now with sort of bringing my instructional design background into my coaching. And so I try to think a lot about sort of how people learn and how behaviors change. So my approach to coaching is to make sure people are creating sustainable, healthy routines and habits that will actually produce the kind of change that they want to see for themselves. I have worked with, as a supervisor, I've done a lot of sort of professional development coaching, and I find that's something that I'm really passionate about. And so for folks who are looking to take their career to the next level, they're looking for, how do I become a leader in my organization? How do I take what I'm learning now and create a plan from it? Because everything that we do is a stepping stone to new opportunities. Even right now, I'm looking ahead to my future, and I'm trying to plan, and I've got a couple of avenues that I'm exploring, whether it's organizational design or looking even at full-time coaching, and sort of this idea of using my experiences that have got me to here and how they all mesh together to create a future. And I just naturally do that. I think it's my design brain. I'm connecting ideas. And so I hope that I can do that for other people as a coach as well, is try to draw clear parallels and lines between previous experience and future goals. And hopefully that all aligns with, excitement and passion.
That's awesome. I love that. And if you could leave folks with one thing to think about today, what would that be?
I think, that's a good question. I think that if I were to leave folks with one thing, it would be, we haven't talked about storytelling at all. And so I think find your story. When you talk about people who are open to working anywhere, and they don't know what company they want, they don't know, and they don't have any sort of, it's just this wide open. I think that it's about self-awareness and coming down to like finding what is it that makes you and you unique, and finding that story and being able to really clearly communicate it makes a world of difference.
I love it. All right. So thank you for joining us this morning, Chad. We'll start wrapping up the live stream, and I'll let people know where they can find you and book time with you if they need it. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for Career Therapy Live. Let me toss that little banner up at the top for Career Therapy Live. Here is how you can find Chad. So I'm going to share my screen. You can head over to careertherapy.com. And that's my big face. Head over to careertherapy.com, scroll down on the page there, and you can see him right here. So head on over if you are looking to work with a coach and you like the cut of his jib. And we will be seeing you bright and early tomorrow morning for our Friday session. Gosh, it's already almost Friday. And until then, good luck with your job search and professional development, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers, everyone. Trying to find the video to close the clip.